Hey there, this is Michelle from Indie Author Blueprint, and we're just going to get right into the content today. We're talking today about pivoting in the middle of your publishing project. So this could be course correcting if something's not working for you. It could be pausing, whatever you need to do. Publishing is not a prison. And so when you're an indie author, you get to make some decisions. And if something is not working for you, you're free to change it. I want to tell you this because in my very first publishing project, I pivoted. I had hired somebody. I was working with a self-publishing company first. So they were going to do the design and the typesetting and everything, and then upload the book and help me with distribution. And I was paying the fee for that. First off, I didn't love their cover designs. I thought that they looked self-published. I didn't love, they had some good ones, but I think they hired a lot of independent contractors, and I knew I just didn't like some of their covers. So I asked if I could hire my own. So I did. So I did not have them do that, but I did ask them to do the interior, and I asked them to do the editing. And one of the things that happened in the editing was they had hired somebody who didn't track the changes. So I just received back a document that was edited, but I had no idea without comparing side by side what they had done. And also it was before Word made it really easy for you to just plop something in and actually turn it into track changes. Now you can do that. If you accidentally didn't have them on, you can compare two documents and actually show the track changes, but that was a while ago, and so that was not a feature. And then also in the process, the very first design I got back to show what the inside would look like was just a title and text. That was it. There was nothing with personality about it. Nothing I had said had been listened to. And I had a choice. I could either say nothing and deal with what was happening, or I could try to explain my rights as a client who had hired somebody to do this work. So first off, I put it on them to figure out how to send me a document that showed the track changes. The reason I needed that was that there were some things I could see right off the bat the editor did that were not standard. And so I needed to fix that, and I was going to have to re-edit it myself. And so that can happen sometimes when you're working with an inexperienced editors. They sometimes add in mistakes instead of taking them out. And then the other thing that I had to do was decide what was I going to do with that interior. Was I just going to say, okay, this is what they offer, this is what I'm getting, I'm just going to have to be happy with that? And so I asked them, and I acknowledged that they had put some time into designing what they had done. They'd put work into it. I didn't expect them to not pay the contractor, but also I expressed that I was frustrated the contractor was not listening to what I had asked for. And so we came to an agreement on what I would pay to cover the time the person had put into the work they had done on that typesetting. And then I could hire somebody else to do the formatting of the interior of the book and then submit the file to them for the publishing process. So it just kind of interrupted where we were, and we were able to reach an agreement, and I was happy with the outcome of it for the most part. I mean, there were other things I could have pivoted. Sometimes you choose your battles. That's a whole other episode. So I want to talk about the pivot today because in the middle of that, I remember being so stressed out and so unhappy with how things are going and feeling trapped, like there was nothing I could do about it. And no matter where you are in your process, even if you're the one responsible for the frustration that you have, you can actually still pivot. You are in control. It might cost you a little money, but when you weigh it out, sometimes it's worth it. So what I want to think about first is that we should normalize pivoting. Every book gets to a place where we have to make some decisions. Something doesn't go the way we expect it to. The cover maybe isn't working for that genre. The editor isn't a good match. The timeline got too tight. Whatever it is, we can pivot. Now, in traditional publishing, I want you to know you're locked in. When you sign that contract with your publisher, you can't just say, what does it take for me to, do something different? Well, okay, I'm going to say it's not never, but it would cost you a lot to buy out of a agreement, a publishing contract. You'd need a lawyer involved. I don't advise on any of that, but you would have a much more painful process of getting out of publishing. obviously, if you were with a traditional publisher. But when you are independently publishing, you have that freedom. You may have signed a contract, like a work for hire for somebody doing things. So you have to be aware of whatever contracts you're in and do things the legal way. But you can always fix what you need to fix. You do not have to keep pressing on and being completely unhappy with what you have. And I think this is what I really love about the indie publishing process, because I've seen some really, I guess painful is the only word I can describe, some painful outcomes of cover designs from some traditional publishers. And I think, oh, wow, I would feel so awful if I were the author who's stuck in this position where they didn't have any say over this cover. And it's not great. And so one of the things that I like about being an indie author is if I get to that point and I say, oh, this is not great, I don't have to love it. I can actually go for something I love. Pivoting can sometimes feel like failure, like it didn't go well, I failed, and now I have to have a plan B. No, we want to think of pivoting as a strength. This is a business skill. This is how people get to the top or achieve their goals, is they know how to protect quality. They know how to protect their sanity, their brand. They know what costs, like what investment is worth it, what is not, and how to stick it out and how to make the changes to make it work. So we are thinking like business owners, and that we're making the decisions we need to make at the right time. And maybe 3 months ago when we made that decision, it was not the right thing for us. And now we realize I'm having second thoughts about it. And so I'm going to go in a new direction. Remember also that second thoughts can sometimes just be cold feet because you're getting really nervous about releasing a book. So this does not mean you're changing, and you never get to that point. It's just that if you get in the middle of something and you realize this was a bad decision, you can change, and it's a strength, not a failure. There are ways then to pivot with professionalism. We want to anchor our mindset in doing things professionally. This means how we treat the people that we work with. If you are not doing everything yourself and you have some contractors you've hired that are involved in it, or you have a writing coach or an editor, or even your group of friends who are your beta readers, whatever you're doing, whenever we're dealing with people, it can be hard to control our frustrations and not want to just unleash. And sometimes I struggle very much with how to explain my frustration. First off, this is just a little side note. When I get frustrated, I cry. So it's really hard to verbalize how I feel if I'm crying. And it's just like, I know this about myself. I just know that is the one thing when I'm frustrated, I go to crying, and it's not to manipulate somebody. It's just what happens in my body. But if I can put it out in words, I read it back. And then one of the beautiful things, if you're trying to communicate in the written form, is sometimes AI is really helpful. You can pop what you wrote, write it yourself, pop it in there and say, does this sound a positive, upbeat, encouraging, whatever? And it will give you some feedback. So that's also helpful. So if you need to make a change, you need to make sure you're treating your designer, your editor, whoever you're working with kindness. You want to be fair with them. You want to communicate clearly, be respectful, direct, and then you want to always follow your contract. So if you've hired somebody and their contract says, if we get partway into this and you decide to go a different direction, you have to pay me for the time I already used, or there's maybe a fee to break the contract because now they don't have the other work, they planned on your work and they left space in their schedule. So whatever you do, you pay what is owed. You look at your contract and you see, what do I have to do, even if the outcome isn't ideal? Another example from real life that has nothing to do with publishing. I was what year was it? A sophomore, I think, in college. I got in a situation where things were going well with some of my roommates and not with all of my roommates. And it was really a difficult situation because it was adding a lot of stress, and I needed to get out of there. And I found a dorm room open so I could move into a dorm, get out of this apartment, back into the dorms. But I couldn't get out of the contract of that rent that I had agreed to pay. I had a lease, and subleasing was messy. It didn't work out. So I had to pay for the apartment and the dorm. But you know what? I look back and I think that was the best money that I invested because I got out of the contract with that. And I'm sure that my roommates were happy that they got to have the extra space that I was paying for. But it was just one of those things where I knew that the money was worth it. And when you are pivoting in your publishing journey, you will sometimes have to pay money and it will be worth it because you're just going to do something different. Now, the thing I want to say here is if you're working with a contractor, always give them the chance to revise if it's appropriate. Now, if you found out the person you hired to edit is completely incompetent, you can't expect them to learn how to be a better editor in a short amount of time. So, piece of advice before you actually hire somebody in that position, get a sample from them so you can see how they edit. So that might be one where you're like, they're partway through, I have to just pay it, or I have to just hire another editor and pay both, whatever. But if you're in the middle of something like, say, a design, and the options you've been presented with for the cover are not working, and maybe they have a clause, like when I work with people, I want to work with them until they're happy. If they don't like any of my first round of designs, we scrap it and start over. Now, maybe people haven't wanted to express that, like none of this is working, but we keep going. We keep revising. For some people, it's like, no, this person doesn't understand my genre at all. I'm just going to cut my losses, pay what I owe them, and move on. So you will know whether that is the right path for you, and you will know how to treat them kindly and fairly in the middle of that. Sometimes then the next step is discontinuing the relationship. So when you do that, thank them for their work, acknowledge what they delivered. Don't treat them like they did nothing for you. Close out the contract properly if you're breaking a contract. I have had a few times where I have broken a contract with somebody who hired me. I'll talk about that in a second. But I write a little contract, a subcontract that says we're breaking the original one, and we both sign that so that I'm not held to that original one either. And then when you go to work with someone new, you want to make sure there's no drama there. You're not blaming, you're not bashing somebody else. It's just moving on and working with someone who's a better fit for you. So I said I would talk about contractors bowing out. The flip side is also important. Editors, designers, formatters, all of that, they do end relationships sometimes if clients are verbally abusive or disrespectful, or their expectations are constantly shifting and the designer or editor can't really figure out, like, I did this and now I was told that wasn't right. I'm not listening. And then you might try something else. And then again, and I have had it before where it is difficult. And sometimes there are people we know in real life and we just don't work together. All of these things can get really messy and it's hard to decide what to do. So there may be times when a contractor says to you, I'm going to have to end our contract right here. And there are ways that they can be fair. With clients that I've done that with before, sometimes it's that I can tell they don't know where they're going with this and they're going to need some time to marinate. So I'll say, we're going to break the contract with where we are right now because I think you need time to work on this and pivot this project. I'm telling them they need to pivot. And I might break the contract and tell them, here's your down payment back. And here's a file that I created for you. I might keep those. It just depends on where we're at in the process. If it's early on in the process, I often have just said, I'm refunding your money and leaving it there. And even though I know I've lost some time, that's up to me. But don't expect that from somebody. It's possible they might keep your down payment or whatever, but don't expect them to also explain every reason for why they've gotten to this point. I've had people before where I've said either, first off, we never got into a contract and I said, I'm just not a good fit for you. I have had people press and ask me, why are you not a good fit? Tell me, list it. Like, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want it to be like a list of all the reasons for why I don't want to work with you. No, I'm not going to do that. So again, professionalism. And whether we are on the designer side or the author side, wherever we are, remember that professionalism protects your name. The indie world is small. It's amazing. You go to a conference and you meet someone and you both know someone. And so we don't want to burn the bridges in negative ways because kindness always protects who we are personally, our own reputation, and it protects the dignity of other people. Okay, what would make you then want to pivot? Let's say if you're in the middle of a project. Well, maybe, like I said, the cover doesn't match the genre. You're thinking you need to go in a different direction. Or you have made some choice changes and you have decided, yeah, this just isn't fitting what I originally thought I wanted. I want to try something different. I'll pay you for your time. Let's make a pivot. It might be the editing style wasn't what you expected or the deliverables. It could mean you're pivoting in your book because you sent out to beta readers and they're really confused and you realized you need to make some content changes and you're going to have to put the book project on pause because there's going to be some rewriting and then you'll get to the design phase. That happens too. And it's important, like if your beta readers give you some feedback, to not just rush forward because you're on a time frame. That's why you're indie. You get to make that change. So you pivot. You have maybe lost your creativity in the middle of a project and you have to table that one and work on another one. That happens to me sometimes. Maybe the timeline feels impossible because of what's going on in your life. Whatever happens, the red flag that pops up in there are red flags often. Listen to the red flag because it saves you a crisis later. It's telling you that you need to pivot. So I've talked about pivoting your designer, editor, cover. Along with that then is adjusting the release date. So let's imagine that let's say you've told everybody the book is coming on a certain date and you're not going to have it ready. Maybe your designer got delayed and so you don't have the files. I've seen this happen, especially in children's books where there's an illustrator involved. Sometimes illustrators take longer than they anticipated. And so you have to then move the date. And it's okay to make an announcement like, oh, yeah, I said the book was coming on this day. It's been delayed. It's okay. Just dial back your marketing a little bit, adjust the date, give yourself the margin you need, and then protect your time. It's okay. The other thing is pivoting your marketing plan. If your book is already out and you've been marketing, this is a pivot you might need to make. It might be that you've realized that you didn't hit the mark and your messaging is not working and you need to come up with a new plan quickly to try to connect with your readers. It might mean that you had your plan in place and you realized that, let's say your book's not released yet, but you had a release plan in place and then you realized the platform you're using doesn't work. Here's an example of what I mean by doesn't work. It doesn't work with your plan. Let's say you were planning to do pre-orders of your print book and you got into KDP and realized, oh, KDP doesn't do pre-orders of print books. They only do it of ebooks. I'm going to have to pivot my marketing plan because I've been telling everybody watch for when you can pre-order and I can't do that. So it might be that I change that to a soft launch where I'm going to actually publish the book and then tell people it's out. So whatever it is along the way, it might be that your mindset is the biggest block. For me, it's the embarrassment factor. And so it's like, I've told people this is going to happen. I'm so embarrassed to have to change plans. What are people going to think? Here's the thing. We don't care what people think. We care about the quality of our product that we're putting out. And no matter what we need to do, we protect the quality. So that means we're going to do everything we can to put out the right book and in the best quality. And so in this way, it's not embarrassment. Pivoting isn't weakness to be embarrassed about. Like I said before, it's professionalism. It's us being dedicated to professionalism. All right, so let's just think about how we can wrap this up here a little bit. You don't have to accept a bad outcome. You're indie publishing, so you get to have the options. You're the CEO of your book or your publishing company or whatever your whole project. You're allowed to change direction. You can protect that project, your team, and your emotional bandwidth in any way that you need to. In the end, it's going to make you stronger. It's going to make your book stronger. And your book really deserves your best decisions. So you get to make those. So if you're thinking about doing a pivot, here's a tip as we go out. Let's just kind of look at what we do if a little red flag pops up in your brain that says, I think I might need to pivot. First, go ahead and pause. Take away that urgency of, I have to make the decision right now. If it means you have to pause, you go ahead and pause and be okay with that. And then evaluate. Really look at what's working, what isn't working before you make any decisions, before you quickly tell somebody, I need to stop this. Let's just take a look at it. Then you decide on the best path. And once you decide on the best path, now is the time to communicate kindly and clearly. So you have to reach out. You have to tell somebody, I think I'm going to need to pivot here. Do you prefer to talk on email or phone call? I mean, I can put my big girl panties on sometimes and do a video chat and tell myself, please don't cry if you're frustrated. I can do it. I have had to do it before. So there are times when, whatever they're asking for, would you like to have a phone conversation, or would you like me to just kind of summarize in an email where I'm at with this? And then once you've established that you're pivoting, now is the time to commit to the new direction. So be all in on it. Whatever decision you made, whatever fallout comes from it, you're all in on it. That framework really helps you to stay grounded instead of reactive to when that red flag comes up. So we're not acting impulsively and cutting all ties and then realizing, oops, I needed something from you. So if you're thinking about a pivot, go ahead and pause, evaluate, make the decision, communicate, and then do that pivot. All right, remember that we are doing this to be professionals. We are treating our writing as a business. And so if you're in that, just know that I've done many pivots in my life and I'm right alongside you. I know how it feels. I know how frustrating and fearful and all the things that come along with it. But we're in this together and I'm here to help support you. So if you have a pivot that you're considering and you want to chat about it, just pop it in the chat on Substack. You'll find Indie Author Blueprint on Substack, and you'll see I have show notes there. I have posts and articles and bonuses for paid subscribers and all that kind of stuff there. So go ahead and look for Indie Author Blueprint on Substack. Thanks for being here today. And if you're thinking about pivoting, I'm thinking about you. Have a great day.